Something that was already on the agenda.
opportunity of coming here. It was the first. Sorry, I'm nervous. It was the first time that I came to this country, and thanks for, and because of the place and the people, now I don't want to go back home. Thank you.
I'm Marco.
I'm Abby.
And I'm Sophia.
And I learned a lot about Sophia, that she definitely loves shopping, and she always wants to have fun. She never wants to be sitting still. And I think that it was just a really great experience to meet her, and I can't wait to go to Spain in April to spend more time with her again.
I'm Abby. I was paired with Patricia Roman, who was actually stayed in Spain this trip. So I actually had the experience of hosting Sophia for the first few days, and Lily, who spoke before, for the last couple, with like little mix-ups with her person Molly is in New York right now, so she's on a trip, so I got to host her. And not expecting to host someone, it was really like great to be able to and have that experience. And I'm so excited to go over to Spain in April because I've never left the country before.
I'm very glad to be here because for me this is like a new world. I have too much fun with both. I love them because they become like my family. I don't have sisters, so they were like, we have like a good relationship, and that's what I give for me. So thank you.
Hello, I am Trevor.
Hi, I'm Abelino.
I'm Noah.
I'm Miri.
Well, what can I say about your country? I want to stay here. Please. I want to stay here. I love your country. It's so perfect, maybe. My American family is so beautiful. I love the food. I love this school. I don't know. I love my American dad's pizza. It's the best pizza I've ever eaten. Really. I don't know. I love my American friend, and I don't know. I want to stay here. Only I want to stay here.
I'm Noah. I'm Avelino's partner, or whatever it's called. We had a lot of fun, and at first it was kind of like weird because we didn't really know each other, but at the end we were very close, and it's going to be very sad having him leave our country.
So I really love this exchange program because it gave me a new vision on a different culture. It was very cool to have a person from a different country when I've never really talked to a person from a different country with a different language for a long time. So it's a very interesting experience.
Alright, this is certainly the best experience I have even participated. I really like it. I really like your country, your culture. I learn a lot with my family. In Thanksgiving Day, they are so nice. I really like you, and I will miss you a lot. So I also learned the importance of each person in in your school. You have signs with you are important or trans life matter, Black lives matter. So I think it's so important and it's really powerful.
So as you can see, it was a wonderful experience by all.
to them. Mr. Burkhead gave a wonderful speech to welcome them and a wonderful gift, parting gift as well. And we're sad to see them go. As you can see, we've made very close connections with them, but we will see them again in April. So thank you so much for everything.
The next item on the agenda is public comment. Is there anyone who is here to speak to the school committee this evening? Hearing no one, we will move to the next item. Recognitions.
In terms of the recognitions in your packet, there are a number of people who have made donations for organizations, and people have made donations to support different aspects of our program. First, I want to thank Jim Blanchfield, who donated $500 towards the concession stand project in memory of his wife, Anna Gomez Blanchfield. We'd like to thank the Peter and Elizabeth Tower Foundation for a grant of $4,356 that will allow the district to administer and have the youth risk behavior surveys scored and the report generated for that. We'd also like to thank the Art of Charity for a $1,000 grant for the geography program, $4,000 for funding transportation to see a musical at the Wheelock Family Theater in Boston, $1,200 for the 6th grade social studies finest hour field trip and unit of study, $2,150 for the 7th grade social studies Museum of Fine Arts in-house presentations on ancient Egypt, Pompeii, and Greek mythology. And finally, $732 for the 7th graders to attend the Legend of Sleepy Hollow at Harwich Junior Theater.
That's great. A lot of thanks to give at Thanksgiving. Reports and discussions. The grade 7 Washington, D.C. field trip for 2017.
I'm Sarah Kane, the Latin teacher at Monomoy Middle School. In May of this year, we're planning a 7th grade trip to Washington, D.C., and I have just some updates for you on the planning process. As we prepare to take our students out of the Cape, some for the first time, to be more globally aware, we had 53 families join us on Tuesday night for a parent information meeting, and since then 30 students have already signed up to come. So we're excited. Our minimum was 20, so we're definitely prepared to go alone without being joined with another school, so we can manage our own itinerary. And we have a cap of 50 students that I think we'll reach before our first deadline, which is this coming Tuesday. The planning team is myself and Jen Walter, the Spanish teacher. So the foreign language team has taken up this project. We think it's part of our job description to take kids away as often as possible. We are working in partnership with World Strides, the leader in educational travel that has been tried and tested by Chatham Middle School in years prior, so I've heard. The numbers are as follows. We plan to leave early in the morning on Friday, May 19th, and return late on Sunday, May 21st, with the hope of being in school on Monday, the 22nd. The 50 of us will go with a ratio of 1 to 10 chaperones. Right now, with the 30 students, we're happy with myself, Jen, and Mr. Wilson as our chaperones, and we have teachers knocking down my door to join. The cost is $649 per student, which is inclusive of everything except lunch and souvenirs. The travel agency offers fundraising through them and financial assistance for those who qualify, should the families highlights that we're planning so far are visits to the Arlington Cemetery, the National Zoo, and as many Smithsonians as we can fit in, especially the brand new African American History Museum. As foreign language teachers, we can't wait to eat authentic Spanish and Italian cuisine in the city. We plan to travel by coach bus the entire way. Lots of students have never flown before, and I'm nervous to have that first chance be with me. So we will take a coach bus for that reason and to keep the cost low. We'll stay in 4-star hotels with 4 students to a room and night guard presence in each hallway. A little bit about World Strides. Again, they're the leader in educational travel. Chatham Middle School has used them in the past. By working with them, they extend their travel insurance policy to us, chaperones, and students. Their learning through exploration and active participation method keeps students busy and tired for all 3 days. Each of their tour guides, hotel liaisons, and night security guards have been background checked and work for the World Strides company. And their tour guides are prepared for interactive Q&A on each site that we visit. And that's it. Thank you very much.
There we go. Any questions? Estelle?
Well, I'm just really impressed because it not only told us about the wonderful things that they're going to be eating and seeing, but also about the liability and the checks for the chaperones and that partnership. So thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Entertain a motion?
I move we approve the proposed Monomoy Middle School trip to Washington, D.C. in May of 2017.
Second.
Any further discussion? Questions, concerns? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstaining? Unanimous? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up, water quality report. Rick Travers.
Hi everyone, I'm Rick Travis, I'm the Facilities Director, very pleased to be here with you tonight, and thank you. So, here we go. Okay, so with the heightened awareness of the quality of drinking water that we've all heard about in the news lately, of course, the superintendent, our business manager, and myself got together and said we need to be proactive on this, so of course that entailed testing. So the good news is, we've tested all the water in all of the schools, and we are good, very good. Excuse me. So in 1991, of course, there's been established regulation to control lead and copper in drinking water, and of course, it's known as the lead and copper rule. If lead concentrates exceed an action of 0.015 milligrams parts per billion, or copper concentrations exceed an action level of 1.3 milligrams or 1.3 parts per million, corrective action must be taken, okay? And that is regulated by the Mass DEP. So, if anyone's curious about what the effects are, because we hear it's in there and it's a danger, this is what's going on there. Prolonged exposure to levels of lead, of course, behavioral and learning problems, lower IQ, slow growth, hearing problems, anemia. As far as exposure to too much copper can cause vomiting, diarrhea, stomach cramps, and has been associated with liver damage and kidney disease. So of course, some of the causes, with a lot of the older buildings built before 1986, are more likely to have lead pipes, fixtures, and solder, which of course would end up in the drinking water. The extent to which lead and copper enter the water is affected by a number of factors, including chemistry, different things in the pipes, things like the temperature of water, amount of wear in the pipes. Like I said, just a lot of different things with the construction of buildings. Okay, so what we did was we took our samples and brought them to the Barnstable County Health Laboratory, and they provided the containers to do that. And we came up with a map and designated certain spots. So when we tested, if if there were a problem and it came back, we would know where that problem is, because of course you don't just take water and bring it there. There has to be a designated draw for this water. So once again, first straw samples were collected from all bubblers and water fountains in each school's kitchen per recommended protocol. It's probably has never been done, but because of, once again, the heightened awareness that's been going on, we thought, let's do an extensive test and see where we're at. So once again, the samples were delivered by myself to the Barnstable County Health Laboratory, and they analyzed the water sample and issued the following reports. So I'll touch on each school real quick. The Chatham Elementary School, all the samples tested from CES resulted in lead and copper levels well below the Mass DEP action level. In all but one sample, there were no traces of lead in any of the samples tested at the Chatham Elementary School. One sample registered a very low level of lead, 0.0034 milligrams, which is significantly below the Mass DEP action level. The copper levels of the samples tested average 0.41 milligrams, also well below the Mass DEP action level. You can see on the bottom there, those are the accepted levels, and there are handouts that I gave to everyone, or they should have, that they can take home and really take a good look through. And what the superintendent wants to do is he wants to put this on our website so that folks at home can go take a look at this and just, feel more comfortable, lack of a better way to put it. Howard Elementary School, all of the samples tested from the school resulted in lead copper levels well below the EPA mass level. 20% of the samples tested showed zero traces of lead. For all of the others, the average trace amount was 0.0015, and of course well below the Mass DEP action level. The copper levels of the samples tested average 0.4 milligrams, also well below. The Monomoy Regional High School results, all of the samples tested from the high school resulted in zero traces of lead. There was nothing, not even a minute bit, which was great. The copper levels of the samples tested average 0.22 milligrams, well below, of course, the Mass DEP action levels. See if I can go back here. Just have to get the Howard School here. I think I may have gone, there it is. Okay, so what happened in the beginning is, I'm sorry, I had to go back a little. What happened with the final school here is this was our first school that we tested, and I did contact the Howard Water Department. They were more than willing to do this for us. And it was quite an extensive test, almost to every fixture in the building, which may have been a little too much, but that was our first test. And all of the tests, once again, resulted in low lead and copper levels well below the EPA Mass DEP action level. And once again, 25% of the samples tested showed zero traces of lead. And let's see, the copper levels of the samples tested average 0.54 milligrams, also well below. Okay. Okay. Once again, I'd like to extend my thanks. Yes.
I think you accidentally skipped over the middle school one.
Did I go from this? I'm sorry. Okay, here we go. So all of the samples tested from the school, once again, resulted in lead and copper levels well below. In all but one sample, there were no traces of lead in any of the samples tested in middle school. One sample registered a low level of 0.0026 milligram, which of course is well below the level of acceptance. The copper levels of the samples tested average 0.35 milligrams, also well below the EPA Mass DEP action level. And of course, I'd like to thank everyone in this room, of course, too, for always making it a pleasure for me to come to work and to be able to do this type of stuff. The support that I get every day is fantastic, and I appreciate that, and I know it comes from everyone in this room. That being said, if anyone has any questions, please.
Good news.
Thank you. And one other thing, please, the water departments and the towns were fantastic, both Chatham and Howard, with supporting us and doing this, along with, of course, everyone that I work with day to
Which
day.
town had better water?
They were both very parallel. And I knew that going into this, because their testing is done normally every year anyway. But, and by the way, we're going to do this on a yearly basis, just to keep everyone informed, comfortable, and just feel good about the water that the kids are drinking if they decide to stop off at a boat and have a drink. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much.
The next item, Monomoy Regional High School graduation rates.
Well, I just
just had to go ahead a nice big drink of our clean water, so thank you. I got waiting before I could do that. And while Jim sets up, thank you for having me, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. It was interesting in hearing Ms. Kane and her proposal for the middle school. One thing caught my eye was the comment she made that she'd like to take kids away early and often, and I wish she was around when my daughter was 13. So it came in really handy. But she's
You want to bring her back, too.
oh, absolutely. Yes. I hope she's not watching, which I rest assured she's not. But anyways, while Jim sets up, I'm going to talk about the graduation rates tonight and some things we're doing to address our situations and give you a clear vision of where we're coming from and that we have a plan and that we're well on our way in achieving our goals. Before I do that, I just wanted to thank Liz Hoff and Leslie Chiswick, who were part of bringing that exchange program to life. And for anybody that's been exposed to a typical exchange program, it's a student comes over, lives with a family by themselves, and or has a guest there. You've never seen something this comprehensive where a whole group of students come over, stay with a family, where the community's involved in action-packed daily agenda, which was out in the community, Plymouth, and to see all the historical sites in Cape Cod. We involved alumni, teachers from our school that came out and did those days, so our teachers didn't miss school, and they spent 2 of the days shadowing our students in school. So it was extremely comprehensive and well planned. Liz and Leslie took all of summer on their own time to plan that, to make connections with the community. I also want to thank the community members who are invited tonight as part of the celebration, to thank them for their donations and making all that stuff happen. It was virtually no charge to the school, and it was all from teachers' work. So a very impressive program, as you can see. The kids were excited. Our kids are excited to go and be reciprocated on that experience. Usually have to wait to college to do any type of exchange of that magnitude, so we're doing those things here. Scott's going to report out later on the Department of Education's report. They were here for 4 days, and they never asked once about our school culture or our programs of such, which is disappointing to me, but things that we're doing great here and that I wanted to share with you, and you saw it in real life tonight. So first slide here. This was a recent report in the Cape Times article, and if you're like me, you pick the paper up, and I don't have the headlines here, but I saved the newspaper, so in 2 or 3 years, when our numbers are closer to 100, I will bring that out. It motivates me. But you look at this, and the numbers are real. They're taken from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. If you look at the second column, percent graduated, 76.9%. The first thing that jumped out to me is, oh my God, there's no way that 25% of our kids didn't graduate. And as you'll see in the details, that is not the case. All right, but at first glance, it appears that way, and that was pretty much the extent of the data. So I thought it was important for me to come out and explain this in person to you and answer your questions, but also to share, how we're addressing this, because the numbers certainly, if that was a 96.9, I wouldn't have to be here, and that someday that's our goal, it will be, and I'm going to tell you how we're going to get there. So the numbers also that I'll be explaining is the next column over, the third column, percent in school, 14.4. If you look at the other schools, besides the percent graduated, that's another number that jumps out extremely loud to me. Is significantly higher than the others, and I'll explain what that is and how that impacted our rates. And what I will not do is make excuses or deflect or spin things. I'm going to share the numbers and what they actually are with you. So defining the terms and numbers, the comment I make there is, as you'll see in next year and the year after, because we're looking at our future numbers and the amount of students with intensive special needs we have that go into our very successful post-grad program, one of the most successful in Cape Cod. And as you see how state reporting happens, we are actually, the more students you have in that program, you're actually penalized if they don't pass MCAS, which most of them in the program do an alternate assessment and do not. So that's that information. So if we look at that 14.4%, in the other column next to that was the non-grad completer. I'll explain that a little bit. It's footnoted in the bottom if you've got really good eyes. And combined total is 17.3%, which is already puts you down, I think, close to 83%. This number is 2.5 times higher than the state average and the third highest in the state of Massachusetts, all schools. And that's, that right away is a red flag. Whoa, what does that mean? Well, it means that we had 10 students that were in that program, post-grad program right off the bat. When you have approximately 100 students in your class and 10 of them are going on to our post-grad, Next year, I think we have 2, and the year after that, we have 2. That's an anomaly. It's something we can't control, but it's right away you're starting at 90% when you talk about graduation rates. And it's something we're proud of to have that program here. And a handful of those kids were choice students that we accepted in because we run a great program. So that's the facts. The non-completer down the bottom a little bit talks about the special needs requirement that those students are sometimes hit at 22 and they either age out or some of them do graduate, which is a good story too. So breaking these numbers down, you have a graph chart in your packet. I have a link here. Come back. Okay. So if you look up on the, I'll start at the top right and work counterclockwise, I guess, because these are really true dropouts. This is what kids we lost, unfortunately. And you'll see that we lost 6 students dropping out of school before we were Monomoy. I can't speak to those students. I never met them. They were never in our school, but we lost them. So right off the bat, we're under the gun there. That first year, out of the 104 students, we lost 2. 2 did drop out, so that's 2 too many to me. So that's the brass tacks with how many kids literally dropped out of school. Again, I can only speak for the numbers since I've been here as principal and since we've been regionalized, and it's 2. So then you see 6. Okay, they were ours, but they weren't really at our school, so I really can't speak to that. Students receiving entitlement transition service, these are the kids I've talked about that are in our post-grad program. The asterisk just explains what I've already talked about. 5 students, and they'll likely be here till they're 22. Hopefully they are. The foreign exchange student that's in there, again, when it's 1% when you're talking 100 kids, 104 kids. That was a student that came here on a foreign exchange program and was reported to the state as a student. So when that student went home, it counted as a dropout. So that's our fault. We didn't report that correctly, but it hurt us. So we fixed that, and we learned from that when we code our students. Graduated in the next 2 columns, you'll see that either in fall of that next year, so students that didn't have enough credits to graduate with their class, over the summer they got a few more credits, or they came back in the fall and finished a course to graduate, but they eventually crossed the line, which is the goal. 5 of those students did it in the fall, and 5 more did it in June. So there's 10 more, there's 10% jump right away. So when you look at 2-year data, which newspapers will likely not report, that's where the 87 comes from. And every school can do that. Hopefully every school goes up, which I think they do. Again, not an excuse, and I'll talk a little bit later about our plan. We started looking at our dropout data and to come up with this plan and how we get our numbers higher, because they're not where we want them to be, certainly. And we'd like those 10 students to graduate on time. So that's the goal. They did graduate, excellent. We want it to be on time, and I'll get to why that happened to some extent in my discussion. So here I just, for those non-visual learners that look like numbers, I just kind of broke it out like that on this grid. So 104 total students. 6 were gone before we became a high school here at Monomoy. 5 in our post-grad program. 1 exchange student. 10 graduated last year with the class of 16, which that makes that 86.5. Still not 100, not where we need to be, and it will go up. 2 student dropouts for 16. Again, 2 too many. Initially, when you look at that chart, it's wow, 25, 27 kids dropped out when it was actually 2 that year. So switching gears, so that's graduation. The difference between a graduation percentage, as you see, is the devil's in the details with all these breakout numbers. We like to focus too, as importantly, if not more importantly, is the dropout rate. Because ultimately, if those kids graduate, that's our goal. If it takes an extra year, okay, we'll do whatever it takes to get them to graduate. But the 4.8% is in line with state averages in Cape Cod schools. However, that's not satisfactory to us. We don't want to be average. So too high. All right, so I admit to that. We're working diligently, and that's the second part of my presentation tonight, is to show you what we're doing to make sure that these numbers improve, because they're not acceptable to any of us. And I want to be back here next year and the year after explaining how these numbers went up and how we will continue to see them grow. Okay, so the second part of the presentation tonight is going to talk about what's going on in our vision for the school year, and so you hope to articulate that as, show your plan, not only for improving the graduation rates and dropout rates, which are a primary focus, but also improve our state test scores. So, any questions on the first part before I move on to the second one, Mr. Meyer?
Yeah, I do have a question. On the chart the chart that shows the dropouts, in 2 and sophomores, 4 juniors, 2 seniors. This is going to sound like a dumb question at the beginning, but what does a dropout mean? I mean, how do we know if they left the school as a sophomore? Do we know whether they ever ended up in another school graduating? I mean, is there any information about where these students ended up?
Yeah, it's a great question, and what we're learning too as we become a district is, once the student enrolls in your school, you're responsible for them. So if they move to Maine, they just up and go. Sometimes that happens. They don't tell us they're gone. It doesn't happen often. But in that case, unless we track that student down and find out that they actually enrolled in another school, they're counted as a dropout. And unless another school claims them, they graduate from there, then it gets recorded, then it's off of our books, doesn't count as anything. So part of our follow-up process and part of our plan is to keep close tracks on our kids. And if they leave, do everything we can to find them, as we're seeing how important it is that, if they, we want to make sure, obviously, that they finish their education, whether it's here or somewhere else. So I think that's a good question. But if someone just up and leaves and moves out of the country, for whatever reason, and we can't track them down, it's counted against the graduation rate.
So just so that I'm clear, if, for example, another school had a student that dropped out, and they were able to establish that the student had moved to Maine and just moved to a different high school, would that then be reported to the state and not counted as a dropout?
Yes.
And how long after they drop out are you able to then amend the numbers?
You do a 2-year and a 5-year. So next year, that's why I put that 86.7 or 5%. That'll show up next year. Scott might be able to give a little more detail on this as well.
There's a limited window in which you can correct your data with the state, and I think that was one of the challenges with the foreign exchange student. We knew the story of the foreign exchange student, but we were beyond a window that we could go and fix it with the state's numbers. One of the things that Bill has in his next section, we really did a forensic debrief. I went over and sat down with Bill and his administration and the entire guidance team to talk about 8 dropouts, 8 individual stories, because each has an individual story. And I think that there's probably some situations in that where we could have coded differently and potentially should have coded differently. To use your example of a student moving off to Maine, if a student moves off to Maine and we don't go and note that they have moved out of state to attend another school, and we just assume that they have gone someplace else and attended some other school and that they're going to get picked up. But if they actually go out of state, they're not in the Massachusetts reporting system, so they kind of leave that cohort of data. So if they go from here to Lexington and enroll in a school in Lexington, they're getting reported back, and they would show up on Lexington's record and not on our record. So some of it is tracking, but some of it's just clear life stories. And I think I think in that debriefing we learned a lot of important things, that lessons we could say that that we can apply to how can we better support students that are at risk to not graduate in the future. Even looking at 6 kids who dropped out before the high school ever even opened its doors.
Thank you, Scott. Any other questions? Okay, so our plan to improve graduation, focus up there is to reduce dropout rate, increase graduation rate, improve standardized test scores. A lot of these goals will achieve those steps, among other things. Obviously, a strong curriculum is expected as well. So number 1 I have there, which I am a firm believer in, is culture. And research will show you that a strong culture in a school, especially, whether it be a company or business or a school, is foundation for all other school improvement. It's about people, not programs. We all know that the most important thing that impacts a child in school is the teacher in front of them. So an example of our school culture and developing that, I think unless you live in a regionalization situation where two schools, in this case 2 high schools of 2 different cultures, come together and work out of boxes that first year, and field trips forms are different, and curriculums are different, and all that kind of stuff. You'll see here that we've come a long way, and that culture is very important. And I think with the first 2 years, we've gone and changed 25 staff, 25 new teachers, and you will see that this year that'll level off. We're in a place right now where we've really put a lot of time into our hiring processes, including very intensive process where teachers are screened, interviewed by our own teachers and administrators, come in and teach a class, and then during that class they are evaluated and assessed by teachers, administrators, and kids. And all of those 3 sectors have to align and approve. And they come to me for an interview. Part of that time when they come in and teach, they sit with our teachers, have lunch, go on a tour of the school, because it's important to us that it's a good fit both ways. We want people to stay a long time here and to be great teachers. And through that process, which no other school district I've been part of does it that way, and that was a collaborative model that we decided on as a school, we've hired some great teachers. The turnover has been, I think we've lost 1 teacher after the 25 we've hired. They're all here still, and they will be next year. So I think that in a new district with culture and establishing that the first 2 years, there's people coming and going. And I remember in that second year when we were talking about the nerves about the budget and the sky was falling because we were losing staff. I think what you'll see is it's settling in a culture that's very strong right now, and that's a good foundation. One of the students that's an exchange student from Spain mentioned it tonight. You've probably seen the signs around the school about you are important. Our overall overarching philosophy is that we're a family here. I liked that I heard that from our guests, and that was their first impression of our school. And that's because of the people here, the kids and the teachers. But you are important is our theme this year, that every single person is important, from our guests to our families to our students. And when something like that doesn't happen, we call each other on it. A student will say to me, Mr. Burkett, I didn't feel important when you made that decision. I said, well, come on in, let's talk about it. So, we really believe in that. I think that that's hard to measure until you start seeing a lot of strong results and things like you heard tonight from guests and visitors. So I think that was the best, the best recipe assessment for that. But that's important. I want to put that there. And that's ongoing, and that's what we really worked hard on and have accomplished the first 2 years. The next one is to develop a mass-tiered system of supports. The Department of Education has a pretty comprehensive layout on how to do that and what it consists of, and it's very well done. We have the pieces, what we're working on, and in the first 2 years we've established all these things virtually from scratch, coming together. They're Monomoy now, and what we're doing this year is taking those systems and putting together and making them communicate with each other and making them cohesive, in that we can identify students who need support, find the supports they need, and then monitor those students until they're successful. And that starts in 7th grade when they start, when they're leaving the middle school. One quick example of things that, again, we didn't have when we started is the summer school program we started from scratch. We identify our 7th grade students in trouble, and we offer them at no charge. If you recall my presentation last year, into your seats, that we offer those students free of charge to come in, and we teach them whatever they're deficient in. And a lot of times it's organizational skills and keeping on top of their math and English and science and so forth. So we had, I think, 5 or 6 students volunteer for that this year, in the pilot year. We expect that to be a larger number next year. So getting them in 7th grade before they even come into our school over the summer. Then in 8th grade, we adopted a team approach, something that we didn't have our first year or 2, where our 8th grade teachers share the same kids and have the same period off each day so they can meet and talk about those kids. And that's part of our monitoring system. So now when you share the same 75 kids, instead of 8 teachers sharing 150, you can focus on those 75 kids. Now you have the time during the school day, as part of your preparatory period, to talk about those kids, especially the ones that struggle, and also have time to meet with parents. Didn't have that before. It's a middle school model that works very well. Former middle school principal, I've seen it, I've done it. So we're going to see the benefits of that this year. We already are by identifying those kids and keeping them on track. A quick data note that I'll share at the end of the year. We're tracking our students who have either D's or F. Every 5 weeks when we do a progress monitor, a progress report, or report card, we print out all those students' names. Anybody that has any D's or F's in their classes, we identify and monitor them. We've cut that number by 50% in 1 year, from last year to this year. Now we're finding out why that happened. Okay, there's a lot of reasons. It doesn't necessarily mean we're doing a better job and everything, but that's a data point that we're proud of, and we think it's because of some of the systems we put in place already. That's just 8th grade. So we also we hired a new academic support coordinator. What that person is responsible for is working with these students that we want identify, working with that 8th grade team, and then those students will go in there for support during the school day. All of the best schools in the country have supports during the school day for their kids that struggle. The old mentality is, well, they need to stay after school, right? And if you hate math, you're going to stay after for more math now. So we've adopted that model into our school, and we're already seeing benefits of that too. So that's kind of a summary, a little bit of some of those other things you see in the bottom. The other ones are student support team and our struggling learners task force, which I'll get into a little bit in a minute. Number 3, so that's going to be the overarching. The whole year it will take to do that, to get those things as a well-oiled machine. But we're not going to wait that long for that to happen, because the kids this year need the help. So what are we doing about the kids this year while we get those things in place and situated? That's number 3. How do we help the kids that struggle? So as Scott mentioned, we looked at, he noted it as a forensic identification. We looked at the 8 students with our counseling team, administration, and Scott, and looked at every student comprehensively, from social emotional issues they may have had to their academics, and to any reasons that we collectively could come up with on why they dropped out. We did that with the cohort of 215, which I was discussing tonight, those 8 dropouts. We did it with the 16, last year's grade that just graduated. We already know who those kids are. We've looked at them, and we start to see some trends and patterns. And one example that we'll talk about in a little while is that our graduation requirements and credit requirements are almost 1 year more than any other high school around, meaning kids can run 112 credits, and our graduation requirement is 100, so that you're not able to fill 1 class each year. Not that we want anybody to, but it really, what we found is that it puts kids behind the 8 ball. If they fail 1 or 2 classes in 9th grade, they're always chasing it, and they're very far behind. And what we found is those kids sometimes lose hope that I'll never graduate, or I've got to take 2 maths and 2 Englishes the rest of my life. So we're looking at that. We're looking at other schools, and I'll get to that in a slide later, but that's a good example of what our forensic analysis has shown us, that we have to change some things to allow these kids better opportunities that are more consistent with what other good schools are doing. Next one is to connect our, the second bullet is basically what we're doing up in the second bullet, up in number 2. In the third bullet, Department of Education, when they came in, they had some good feedback for us that we needed to use more data, to drive our decision making. They were right on the money, getting that culture going and everything. We used data, but we weren't using it as good as we can this year. We can, and it's great, and we are. So we'll be able to satisfy that request and suggestion by the state, because we're doing it. Here's an example. I gave you the student lists. So an example of that is that printout I talked about, where the administrative team, when we meet, is talking about those same 20 or 30 kids, whatever it may be in each grade, and what are we doing about it. Our student support team, that consists of the school nurse, school psychologist, adjustment counselor, counselors, resource officer, administrators, teachers, meet weekly, and they're the conduit where all these students are referred to that are struggling. They talk student by student, kind of like we did for our kids that didn't graduate. We're talking about our kids in 8th and 9th grade that aren't doing well, and what are we doing now to support them? So that's happening now. It hasn't been able to happen in the past that cohesively and that strong. So that's happening this year. The early warning indicator system, EWIS, down there on the 3rd bullet, is something the state puts out each year, and they have a list of indicators, and it comes out every August. And they monitor kids, and they have a set of criteria, and they monitor the kids at every grade level is a high, moderate, or low risk of dropping out. And we just started to be able to use that data this year, and some of those indicators, for example, are attendance, suspensions, or discipline, and failing grades. What research will show you is that if a student fails more than 1 class in 9th grade, they're 3 times less likely to graduate high school. So we're putting a lot of our time and effort in those three is that we're doing that now, and we're catching the juniors and seniors that didn't have that because we weren't in school then. So we're kind of doing double the work now, but we're having the systems in place now for 8th and 9th graders to get identified and supported, so that that doesn't happen, and they do pass 8th and 9th grade, so they will graduate, or more likely to graduate. And we do have our eyes on them. So the next bullet is develop and implement an attendance oversight model. Attendance is usually a huge indicator of student success, and we've really drilled down on this and have developed a new plan where we've broken it down to as low as 3 absences. So for example, we have a tiered system of interventions for attendance. So after a student has 3 absences, and this is just starting now, a human being will call them. Every time they're absent, we send an email to the parent to let them know. Now when they hit 3, which is, you know, the big scope of things, not a ton, the guidance counselor will call home just to check in. Is everything okay? Just noticing that, you know, absent, just want to check in. At 5, okay, now there's a meeting with the student and the parents. You know, is everything okay? You know, because to us, 5 is a little bit of, you know, concern unless they're excused absences. I'm talking about not excused absences here. And then when we get into 7, it goes to the SST team. So now that it's funneled in and no one falls through the cracks. We didn't have this before. So now at 7, that team of individuals there, representative of the school and support systems that we have, whether it be academic or social emotional, are together, and they're talking about specific children and specific needs and specific solutions. And then that's, a plan is drawn up at that point. And then we'll get kicked back. What are we going to do? Okay, the student's hurt in math class. Or the student's not coming to school because they have social emotional skills. Do they need to see our school adjustment counselor or school psychologist? Okay, so an individualized plan is made there, and everybody's included in that conversation, teachers, parents, kids. Next bullet talks about establishing, we have what's called a Struggling Learners Task Force that's very strong, and it's representative of volunteer teachers and administrators, and Dr. Blanchard's on it as well from central office. We started that last year, because this was our focus last year too. And that group was responsible for coming up with our homework policy, which is typically the third rail of education that nobody wants to talk about in any school, right? Because there's such diverse opinions on it. Well, we value homework and we think it's important, especially at the high school level, but we were able, and this talks a little bit about culture too, we were able to talk about homework with our staff, because that group, which consists of teachers, came up with solutions and suggestions and recommendations. So what we did, and you can see this in our handbook, it used to be, okay, just a generic, you know, homework policy that we have it and it's important. Now we've actually defined what it is, that it's purposeful and meaningful, and we talk about how we give homework, and that it can only be a maximum of 20% of your grade. Before, we didn't have any controls over that. Teachers could just arbitrarily, some could give 10 and some could give 50. So now, I think that's a concrete example of the work that group can do and what our culture can do collectively with those complicated decisions. So that group's going to be tasked with taking all these systems and putting them in place so we have a cohesive model that includes everybody in the conversation. A subcommittee from that group will talk strictly about data. We'll meet more regularly, and we'll look at our student data, because the problem with data is there's so much of it. You have to be very careful that you use what's the right data, the data that can help with results, and when you have goals, that your goals are supported by data. So the example I gave was the dropouts rate's an obvious one. Some other ones are D's and F's for kids that we're looking for. The other one is 9th graders who fail our courses, because that's the indicator that research is used to show if kids will graduate early. So we'll be looking at that, and the data team will do that. The next one is something we're excited about that hopefully will be back soon to share with you more specifics. I'll give a little whet your appetite, hopefully, for the JOSM Hour, which is something, again, our culture has allowed us to come up with collectively as a staff. It's not a top-down, it's not necessarily my idea. It's teachers and administrators getting together and coming up with something that can help not only our struggling learners, this is good for all kids. I'm just going to show you a little bit of, Jane Elsperman was a principal in Westport High School in Florida. She was the 2015 National Principal of the Year. She's currently the president of our biggest association, the National Association of Secondary School Principals. And a lot of it was because of this idea and what she did, was able to turn her school around. They had if I look down at a couple of databases on the third bullet, failure rate of 37% of their kids, a lot worse than ours, and reduced it to 3.8%. And she attributed that this model was a big indicator of that, of getting kids help. Increased student participation in co-curricular activities from 10% to 60%. I put the link in there, and Barbara's going to be able to send this PowerPoint over to you. I suggest you check that link out or Google Jane and the work she's done. I spoke to her recently. She's helped us in our committee come up with this plan. She's been very helpful working with Scott on kind of pilot this. We want to try it out and see how it goes, and certainly share the, before we start out with you, the concept is basically during the lunch hour getting kids supports and also offering enrichment. Similar model to our enrichment model, which is held at the end of the day every 2 weeks. This would be during each school day. And I'll give you more specifics on that at a later date. So that's still in development, and we hopefully look to pilot that in January. But there's some results. Jane says from the beginning, students exceeded expectations, and magical things began to happen. So, again, a research-based, she's not the only school that did this. There's not many in Mass doing it. But all the schools that we researched that have done it were successful. And the whole concept is having high expectations for kids and letting them rise up to it, and your teachers. So I look forward to sharing a little bit more about that, but that's something we're also working on this year to make us unique and better than any school around. The next one is revised graduation requirements, graduation credits, which I alluded to a little bit earlier. We think that's hamstringing our kids to have less opportunities and also making it tougher for them to graduate. It's not lowering the standards. You still have to take credits to graduate, and we'll have graduation requirements. Again, I'll be reporting back on the specifics of that. It'll be in our handbook. We're working with the staff right now to, we're researching what other high schools offer, what's best for our kids. And a quick example that I can give you is when our kids have to take 4 years of social studies, science, math, and English. The sciences with a technology component. So in senior year, if you're doing your scheduling, you're all excited to be a senior and have some electives and take some things and get ready for college. You have to take a math, science, English, and social studies. And you have to take a semester of wellness or physical education by law too. So there's 4.5 classes right now out of 7. So as a senior, you only get 2.5 choices. So I think that was well intentioned. It's okay, but it's not great for our kids. So we have to look at changing that and making it more flexible, because we have so many opportunities to offer kids. And the credits I talked about a little bit earlier, and again, I'll get more details back to you, but we think after looking at other schools, that's part of our issue right now too, with having so many credits graduate, a lot more than a lot of the Lincoln Sudburys or the Carlisle. I think that we have to realign and look at that, and we are. So I think that's good news for us. And the next couple things, keep in mind, we're going to be under a NEASC review in less than 2 years. The good news is that we're very well prepared. My promise to the staff was that this will not be one more thing, it'll be what we do. Because I'm a firm believer in NEASC and the standards they have. It's good practice, it's best practice, and it's good education, it's good for kids and adults. So the first thing, and the timing is outstanding, is that you develop core values and beliefs and 21st century learning expectations. I'll look forward to sharing that work with you soon. Basically, that's something that we're kind of living now, but we don't have it down on paper. It's not a mission statement because we have that. It's just some non-negotiables that we commit to, and that's all inclusive. So our staff on their professional development day worked collaboratively to come up with initial draft of what those are. We'll refine those. We had a leadership lock-in, which is the student leaders of the school, close to 100 every year, go through a vetting process and then have a whole evening of events and leadership training and our way to grow more leaders in our school. Those students did the same activity the adults did and came up with their core values. So the students have a voice. We'll blend the two in, and with our school council, I'm going to open it up to the entire community to come in, parents, community members to come in, see the work we've done, and have input as well. So that will be all inclusive, and then report back, and those will be great to have at the end of the year. Part 2 of that process is to have a rubric. So you can't just come out and make 100 of these things, because you have to have measurements for all of them, which is good. And And so we'll develop a rubric to measure those, so we'll be accountable for what we say is what we do. So that's our NEAS work. The last one, and certainly as important as the rest and all-inclusive, is the school improvement plan implementation. We spent a lot of work on our school improvement plan last year, and it's a great document, it's a great guide, and we look at it every day. And all of those things I just talked about are woven into our school improvement plan. Again, so it's not one more thing, we're doing it, and we're achieving our goals through that. So it's a good guide, so that we're achieving our school improvement plan goals while accomplishing all these other goals. I shared this same speech at the beginning of the year with some of these goals with our staff, and at the last faculty meeting, I reviewed it again, so they're very clear on our mission, our vision, and they're all on board. And we're excited to carry it through. So I'll take any questions.
Great presentation.
Excellent.
Very informative.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me, I have one question.
Sure.
This is impressive and seems to be well thought out and a lot of support for those learners that are having problems. My question is, as you embark upon these changes and implementation, is it possible to get some sort of a timeline as to where the steps are as you progress in this?
Yeah, I think in a school improvement plan, a lot of these things are mentioned, and we have timelines in there.
Okay.
But it's spelled out, whether it's by the year, by the
But like as you, what is it, the Josamawa and
Oh, yeah.
all that?
Josmauer's in there, yeah.
Okay.
It's the specific dates are year to year, not by month. But I think like the Josmauer and the graduation requirements and stuff, I'm going to come back to this group and report out on that. That'll be all this year. All those things at number 2 are this year.
Good.
And some things, Donna, are also things that the district has addressed. If I kind of loop all the way back to just the going into this forensic debrief on the kids who truly dropped out. The conversation I had with the admin team and counseling is the numbers that Bill presented at the very beginning that were in the Cape Cod Times article. They are what they are. Those are the numbers. We need to go and focus on the variables that we can fix and address. And 8 kids from the class of 2015 who didn't graduate, we own them, and we need to understand their life stories. But then there's a set of kids who graduated. There were 10 kids that graduated but didn't graduate on time. And I think one of the lessons learned there is we need to address graduation requirements that we require almost a full year's worth of credit beyond what most of the other school districts near us. So I suspect that a good number of them needed one more class, and the reason that they didn't show up as a 4-year graduate and walk across the stage in June is they still needed another 4 credits, and so there's structures that we've put in place and that I think we can look at potentially revising and not making it a less rigorous institution for for the vast majority, but trying to support some kids who struggle. Just to kind of share 3 really quick themes from that debrief, many of which have been addressed. One of the themes that showed up in 8 kids, and there are at least 3 kids in each one of these categories. Multiple freshman years. And I think Bill raised in this that if a child fails one class, the odds of them not graduating have tripled. And in this case, at least 3 of the kids in this this grouping had multiple freshman years. I mean, they were struggling to get enough credits to get advance out beyond 9th grade. And I think that if we look at that set of students, we have to look as an institution. This is one of the things that I know Bill's team will wrestle with this year. For kids that struggle, how do we give them hope and second chances? Because if as a former high school principal, kids that drop the ball and really struggle emotionally for let's say a month, can burn themselves completely out of credit for an entire year. And if they don't have hope, if their next chance doesn't come until next September, it's kind of tough. So can we find ways to have that reset be on the quarter, the semester? So how can we look at sort of shortening the intervals of the next chance for some students to give them hope? Another theme that emerged in that group is at least 3 of them were students that came in through school choice mid-year. And one thing that we changed as a team, since the district has come together for the last 2 years, we haven't been bringing in school choice students mid-year. And again, I think that was a factor of what had happened with school choice before the district came together. But if you think about it, kids that are moving schools mid-year potentially may be running from something, and there's they just kind of go off somebody else's drop-off list and show up potentially on ours. So so that's one of the things is we kind of shut off school choice at the beginning of September. The other thing that actually state law has changed since this happened, but we've also made sure that it's not happening in this district, is that kids, there were at least 3 of those kids that served a inordinately long suspension. Essentially, a school district that kicks a kid out of school, shock, they show up as a dropout. And so making sure that we're not having some sort of draconian suspension, and that if we're excluding a kid, that we're excluding a kid with support, and have a way that we can bring them back with support. And again, that's something that those were happening before this high school this high school opened up. But they're clear lessons that you can learn from the past, and the states made changes to the law that you can't go and suspend students the way that some of these students in the class of 2015 faced.
I'm glad you said those, because as I try to get information, it's helpful to see those things that I'm maybe not aware of. That's good.
Scott.
I just want to say thank you for this whole presentation, for owning up to the numbers, for talking about the numbers without trying to hide them or change them or say that wasn't my problem, but this is what we're going to be doing to fix it, and this is what we're already doing before these even came out. So I just want to say thank you. This was very well done. Thanks.
Mr. Russell.
And Bill, I echo that. Listening to your summary and where you're going to start from, it's such an exciting moment for all of us, even though there's stress and pressure and a challenge in all of this. This is really the beginning of building a whole new foundation. This building is a physical foundation, but when we launched 2 or 3 years ago, bringing these 2 systems together, and we are practicing patience, and we're introducing new to staff, and I think it was athletically. Someone once said at a meeting I was in that pressure is a privilege. And when athletes rise to the occasion, when they see a challenge, so what you've showed us is a prescription, and as a kid, I remember, it dates me, on radio, the Lone Ranger program was on, and there was a segment of every evening where there'd be a pause, and the Lone Ranger said to Tonto, I have a plan, and I'll tell you as we ride. The audience never heard that plan. So it's nice to see, this is what it looks like here for a year or 2 or 3. And we don't need to just assume there's going to be a ride here. So it's a great time for school committee members to be sitting here year 3 and year 4 to see how we develop this with tripping over ourselves. And if this happened to be a piece of data of 80, 70 cents, whatever the number was, to generate this, all this is good. So I too join in, say thanks for the early stage of responding to this, and to see how we develop this plan and see how it all works with a countless number of activities that years ago just wouldn't be done. So kudos to you and the crew.
Thank you, Kimasabi. Anybody else?
I would say that it's very impressive, this fairly dynamic plan that you have. And what I like about it is that first, when we were talking about this, we were focusing on the school dropout rate. And I know that's the overarching thing, but inside this, with this early warning and looking at the 1D and 1F, I think we're going to look at improving a lot more than just the dropout rate. So,
100% agree, yeah. Including curriculum. We learn as educators and teachers that why are they failing? Are we teaching it the way it should be taught, differentiating like it needs to be? So yeah, there's going to be a lot of learning for us as we grow.
thank you.
Rick, I have a question. It's a lot of information, it's a lot of great information, and really appreciate the detail, and I'm sure it's going to go a long way. We look forward to further reports as you go along as to how well it's working. Kind of a general question. It seems to me that the overall culture of the school carries a lot of weight. This has a lot to do with students that are at risk, that you're working towards making sure that you recognize those risks and deal with those risks. But in terms of the staff and the teachers and the students who are not at risk necessarily, and maybe I missed this as part of the presentation, it was a lot of information, but what is the basic process for, how do you run your complaint department? I mean, how do you let people know? How do you let people know, or do you let people know that the door is open kind of thing? And people can, like for example, do you put the seniors in the auditorium once a year and say, okay, anybody got any complaints? I mean, so that sometimes people just don't have anything really important they want to say, obviously, but they like to be heard, like me.
That's a great question. I'll be happy to answer it. I think the key to a successful culture is communication. A lot of principals, every principal say when they get a job is I have an open door policy, except that nobody ever enters it, right? Because they're scared or there's no welcoming environment there. So you have to go out where the people are, to the teachers' classrooms, to the kids. So, for example, I'll start with the kids. Every year we have town hall meetings. Actually have them twice a year because once is not enough. By grade, we meet with them and we talk about, right off the bat, first of all, our safety procedures and that kind of stuff. We talk about them philosophically. The things we share here, you are important. So the first thing I talked about is culture with our kids. Just as important I talk to them as I talk to the adults. So first week of school, we have town hall meetings. Culture is the primary topic. That's why you'll see, with something we haven't even talked about is our suspension or discipline data, because it's gone to virtually non-existent. Scott talked about, drug suspensions, fights, virtually non-existent here. First year we had a few, but because of the culture, those things, we're not, you don't see that in a lot of schools. So I meet with them, we talk about that. We have a culture here where the kids feel that they're listened to, and I'll give you some examples. I have a policy that kids can talk to me anytime they want. If they want something changed in the school, they have to advocate for themselves, because we're not going to be able to baby them in the real world. So what they have to do is come up with a proposal, meet with me, I'll challenge them on it, and if it works, we go for it. So one example is I got a very, and I'd be happy to share, it was one of the best well-written proposals I've seen in a long time. It was written by some of our senior class officers. They wanted a senior lounge before school. In that proposal, they asked to meet with me to explain it. In the proposal, they said they had a location. It was before school, so it wouldn't be interfering with any of the adults' meetings. The only thing they wanted was to purchase their own Keurig to have coffee. That they would clean up. If there was any mess at all, it would be called off. I met with them for about 30 minutes, and they identified a conference room we have upstairs, which is nice, but a little boring. There's nothing on the walls. At the end of that 30-minute meeting with the class officers, they came up with the ideas, well, we'll have the National Art on site and our student artists come up with student art to put on the walls. We'll get furniture for the place. We'll make it comfortable. So there's an example of students, and so I said yes. I find ways to say yes. So that's kind of the open door we have. The kids are meeting with me regularly on those types of things. I'm very proud of them. A couple of students wanted to start a new club. They met with me. We talked about it. They had an adult that wanted to do it. We started a new club. So So that's the kind of, and then the other thing is to ask the students. We survey our kids all the time. They have a voice. The end of the year survey that Scott does is awesome. Not many school districts do that. That's another voice for the community. I'll give the community my next example. I'll try to wrap up the question. So when we do that survey at the end of the year, we all take it as principals and we pay attention to it. And we learn from it and we make changes based on that. So our school council right now is dissecting that survey. I don't hide it from them. It's representative students, parents, and community members. They're all looking that over. Our next meeting, we're going to come down and look for trends and what we do well, what we need to improve on, and what our steps are to improve that. So that's listening to the community, to our students. It's broken up by students, community members, and teachers. And so we listen that way, and then we act on it. And I share that information with the kids, the community, and the students and say, we listen to you, kind of like a proposal like this, and this is what we're doing about it. Then the last thing is the faculty. How do I communicate with the faculty? We have several avenues for this. We have an open door policy, certainly, but we go out to where they are, and we started something new this year. We call it Swimming with the Sharks, where in some of that survey data that I looked at last year, some of the teachers were, well, we know we have X this committee, that committee, but geez, we'd like more access to you. I think it was 2 teachers said that. Well, it's too many to me. So our administrative team, every Friday morning, we get coffee and muffins. We go up in that conference room from 7:30 to 8, and we avail ourselves to any teacher that wants to come in there. And the opportunity is to come in and talk to us, get us alone for 5 minutes about a concern you have. It's also an opportunity just to come, if you have no concerns, just to come in, hang out, and build relationships, talk about our kids, talk about our personal lives, get to know each other. We're averaging 10 teachers a week on that alone. And it's social, but there's also problems being addressed, so they're taking advantage of that. Another thing we started last year that's been very powerful in decision making, and so that we have a strong culture, is our faculty senate. It completely consists of teachers. And the teachers go, and if you can't make the meeting, it's drop in or drop out. You email those teachers for agenda items, and it's basically about concerns you have. And they're vetted there, and they're not vetted in the teacher's room. So everything's above board. This is what we don't like. This is what we need to change. 2 chairs of that committee then meet with me with the concerns that the staff have. We address them. We respond to them. They put my responses down, and we share the notes with the staff so that they know. A big part of this is a two-way street is they have to know that I'm listening and that we're acting on it. So they get responses every bi-weekly. They see, okay, we had a problem with this. This is what we're doing about it. We had a problem with this. This is how we're solving it. So they get real-time feedback. So if you address those problems, and those little problems don't become big problems in the teachers' rooms or out in the parking lot, you have a positive culture because teachers know they have a new avenue. The other thing I do is I meet monthly with our union reps and just talk anything. How's the contract going? Are we abiding by it? You got any concerns? Is there any, just one other avenue from the union perspective that we're making sure that we have a good, solid relationship. And to be quite honest with you, we've had less than 1 agenda item in the last 3 meetings. That's a good sign because I've been in school districts where, there's a lot of this. So I look at those as all different types of avenues where teachers have access to the administration, to the decision-making process, and are involved. The examples I gave tonight of the JOSM hour, the graduation requirements, all these things, teachers have input in. Quite honestly, with the exchange students tonight, these are teachers' ideas, not mine. So I hope that answers your question. Thank you very much.
I kind of like to hear the same, I'd kind of like to ask the same question of the other principals at some point, kind of get some feedback as to what they're doing in their school's culture. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? Thanks again.
Thank you.
Monthly financial report.
Fun part.
2017.
Good evening, Katie Isarnio, Business Manager. What you have in your packets is the year-to-date expenditure through October 31st, 2016, and I need to apologize because there was a mistake. There is the actual unexpended balance is $30,000 higher than what we have here. I didn't decrease an encumbrance of $99,000. So anyway, I apologize. I discovered it after they were already sent out to everybody. Year to date, except for the encumbrance issue, we have 4.1% of the budget unencumbered and unexpended. Our year-to-date budget, the budget for FY17 as a reminder to everybody, And going forward, I really should have this up on a PowerPoint, I apologize. 36,354,036 is our FY17 dollar amount. Yeah, that's for the next, this is the next presentation. Our year-to-date expenditure is $10,392,159.96 with an encumbrance of $24,471,737.71 and just over a budget balance of $1.5 million. I don't know if anyone has any specific questions. I'll just bring your attention to in the fixed charges, we see a negative balance, and that has to do with our health insurance encumbrances and some additional retirees, but that will wash out. And then when you look through the detailed lines, there is a negative balance in one of the instructional materials line, and that is for our math and focus textbooks that we purchased this year that will be making some adjustments throughout the year. Also included is a revenue report with a year-to-date, and we're right on target with where we should be with the majority of our revenues coming from our two towns' assessments. I don't know if anyone has any specific questions on this.
Any questions?
I figure I'll probably stay here for.
Sure.
Okay.
Fiscal 2018 draft budget.
Here we are in FY18. The auditors will be here on Monday, finishing up 16, and the IRSs are auditing 15. So, that being said, what I want to just talk to you for one brief minute is about the process of the whole budget, because I think it's important for everybody to understand what is going on behind the scenes. The superintendent and I, as well as the director of curriculum and the director of student services, meets with all the principals, and when we're all available to get in the same room, and the principals come to the budget meetings with their wants, their needs, their must-haves, and we have good conversations about class sizes, enrollment, what's coming down the pike. And unfortunately, as you'll see in the presentation, a lot of the budget numbers that really impact the overall budget really fall under my domain. The increases in health insurance, the contractual obligations, so that when we're talking to the principals overall, it's a very small piece of the budget that there's a lot of flexibility in. But we have some really good conversations about what we see, what we need, and the direction that the district wants to move in. And then we presented, we've had, as you know, we've been to the towns a couple of times, and then the finance subcommittee of the school committee met with the superintendent and I, and we talked about where we were, the issues at hand, and so we have a draft budget here. It is December 1st, and as my standard line is always, this is a draft with a capital D. I might even say capital DRAFT at this point. And as always, it says of 8/17 on December 1st, this is what our budget looks like, because it's early in the process, and so anyway, so we started with some budget assumptions, and I have to have my glasses for this. We leveled Chapter 70 funds at the final governor FY17 budget numbers that came out in July that were more favorable than what we were carrying throughout the whole year. We used the July 8th 2016 FY17 minimum contribution amounts that the state sets as minimum contribution that each one of our towns must contribute towards the price of the education. We level funded the school choice and the circuit breaker offsets. And some of the big, the tough ones are that we're looking at right now a 15% increase in the health insurance rates for our active employees and a 10% increase in the insurance rates for the retirees. The Retirees, typically that's more around a 5%, but this year they're predicting a larger increase. You know, we can only hope that that goes down because every percentage point there is significant. Where the 3-year rolling average has a slight shift, as does the 3-year rolling average for transportation and operating debt towards Chatham, a little bit shift towards that, which impacts how we assess the budget as well. We've outlined the current staffing levels with steps, lanes, and all of the contractual obligations, and we funded OPEB at the same $100,000 that we have in the FY17 budget. We went through, as I mentioned, we had all the conversations, and then we, what this budget that, in your package you received a summary and then a more detailed piece of it, and then there's even a more detailed behind the scenes as well. And then once we entered in all that information, we then categorized them as wants, needs, and must-haves. And I think this is the basis of discussion that we can all have, because if somebody's want might be someone else's need, and I'm the one that always says we have to must-have like the 15% health insurance increase. We had added in an additional bus with the anticipation of the change in start times. I was being a little conservative, just wondering if in fact, you know, we could do it with the same number of buses. The general consensus is that yes, we can, but I thought let's just add that in to be safe. Our must-have, we have the contractuals, you know, I'll get to the bottom of the our bus contract. We've added some VIPS coordinator, vision training. What I think I might do is get to the bottom line and then we'll get back up. Excuse me. I was trying to see if I could just shrink it down so it would all fit on one page.
If you go to view,
Sorry.
you can choose to on the Zoom. So go to 75.
Sorry.
Oh, now we can all read it.
Full screen button, is that?
Yeah, I know, that's what I was trying to, oh well. Okay, there we go. That's that bottom we can certainly regroup with. So when we look at the wants, the needs, and the must-haves, what this budget reflects is a $2,039,389 budget increase over the FY17 budget, or 5.6% budget increase. So the first column represents the wants, the middle column, that's the only heading we can't see, are the needs, and then on the right-hand side are the must-haves. So you can see the must-haves are all of the contractual obligations with salaries, as well as our anticipated increases in the health insurance, the bus contracts, our insurance, dental, etc. So that's $1.7 million of the $2 million budget increase really falls under the categories of must-have. That represents, of the budget increase, that's 85% of the increase falls under the must-haves. Then the wants is $185,190, and then the needs of the $125,422. And in those needs, that's where we have the textbooks at the high school. We were able to pilot some books this year, but we need to make the purchase next year. As we know, we have the consumables for our math and focus curriculum. We talked about that. There's a need for a stipend for the TV studio manager that would have the TV studio represent activities throughout the whole district and not just activities at the high school, but pre-K to 12 on our local access channel. The Lexia is a reading software that we need to renew, as well as the middle school's one-to-one lease for the initiative for the Chromebooks for the middle school. Those are the categories that are under the needs. And then the wants, we have the additional bus, the VIPS coordinator, visions training. We're looking at clerical support for the clerical support for the athletic department. So if you look at the FY17 budget and just increase it by the must-haves, it represents a 4.8% increase in the budget. If you increase it by the must-haves and the needs, it represents a 5.1% increase in the budget. And if you do all three, the wants, needs, must-haves, that's the 5.6% increase in the budget. And again, this is draft and it's December 1st. So I think that it's a good time for the committee to ask questions or even talk amongst yourselves about the wants, the needs, and the must-haves.
So.
I don't see, I'm concerned about grade 4 to 5 because right now we have nine fourth grades, and this would make, I think the plan next year is to have 8, and that's concerning to me because it puts the numbers above what we're talking. Right now they're slightly above what they should be. And so that would put it more above that. And if we knew that those kids would be all easy to teach, perfect students, that wouldn't be real concerning, but.
So some of the thinking here is this just to emphasize the staff increase here it's a level staff budget. I think that what we could look at for that is addressing it either working with Harwich Elementary School or working with the middle school. So, so for example, we saw 30 fewer students currently in 6th grade this year than what we had anticipated and staffed for. So there's going to be that same group is going to be moving up to 7th grade. So there's some capacity within the middle school to address this within middle school staffing. And if we look in Sam's building currently at Harwich Elementary, while we moved a teacher up to have that additional teacher in 4th grade, in 3rd grade behind them, there's one fewer section. So it's entirely possible that we may be able to look at, do we move for the year for the bubble one of those 4th grade teachers and loop them up, or that sort of concept where you're providing some relief that way, and that the 5 sections that are currently in 3rd move up to 4. So I think there's the capacity there to look at addressing it within the staffing that we have, which is why we didn't select to add a teacher there. Although, but I think that this is the forum for the school committee to say, okay, if I want the teacher, where do you put it? Is it a must-have, a need, or a want? Because I think the balancing act we have here is, as Katie said, the must-have column is at 4.8, the must-have and needs 5.1, must-have needs and wants at 5.6, and we've heard from at least one of our partners in Harwich. The Harwich Selectmen have forecast that we should be looking at something akin to a 3.25. So it's so those are things that we have to kind of balance on. What can we sustain?
I would on the next year's grade 7. I think that would be concerning to me if it was taken from that, because there were some other concerns about that grouping in other years. I don't know anything about the elementary school or how many kids are in there, but to me, that would be a need. I would put it above the Chromebooks or the VIPS coordinator, even though I think those are important.
You're talking about adding what as a need? An additional teacher? If I understood what Mr. Carpenter said,
Right.
it's possible that we could have a 6th or 7th grade teacher teaching 5th grade and a 4th grade teacher teaching 5th grade for that population bump, which would mean not having to hire any new staff.
Right, but I don't agree from what I know about the next year's 7th grade that would be a good move. But I don't know anything about the elementary school, whether that would or not. If it's not hurting anything there, I think that's fine, a solution. I don't know about those things, so I'm not sure.
Well, we have a pretty well-defined policy the school committee has a pretty well-defined policy for what we want to strive for class size.
Yes.
So if the administration is fairly well convinced that it can be accomplished, that the class sizes won't increase beyond those numbers without having to hire an additional teacher, that seems like a win-win.
I just wanted that to be not average. I'd like to look at it like when you have a number for whatever grade. If it's 23 or whatever, I'd like to not look at what the average is, but at what each classroom is, because that's the intent, to have the difference to be what the child's experience is in the classroom, not a statistic on paper.
Anybody else?
I take it that everything that's in the 3 columns are ongoing. None of them are a capital type nature that's not going to be a repeating expense. Because everything is referred to as a lease, not as a purchase.
Right, so the leases, those are ongoing, the leases.
Right, so like the middle school one-to-one project.
Mm-hmm. That would be the first year of a 3-year lease.
But then that keeps going on.
That's exactly right.
I think the only one that might be a one and done would be the high school techs, if I'm correct on that. I think the Math and Focus, it's a new math program that has a consumable each year, and this is now building the consumable that would happen year after year into the budget, whereas this would be purchasing science textbooks for 8th and 9th grade, sort of one time and done, at least for a handful of years.
A few years. Is that looking at the new science program for the 8th graders?
Right, so it's looking at an oceanography book,
right,
and then also looking at a conceptual physics book for 9th grade that they're piloting this year.
And part of the discussion, when the subcommittee of the school committee met, and we were the budget subcommittee, we had some really good conversation, and one of the points made that was, I thought, very valid was this year the anticipation of the 15% increase in the health insurance rates has to do a lot with the Cape Cod Municipal Health Group in the past using the fund balance to keep the rates lower, and that we need to make the adjustment to those rates in FY18 not with the thoughts that year in and year out that the health insurance was going to increase by 15% going forward. So this is a similar kind of problem as Monomoy had when we were using too much school choice to offset our budget a couple of years ago, and we had to wean off of that.
Right, it's
so
not sustainable.
That's a possibility, which I thought was insightful in that conversation.
So the one-to-one, is that covers all students?
Yes. At the middle school.
Right, yeah.
and one of the things that I also should have put on the assumptions is that we level funded the capital needs and for technology and for maintenance. And when I met with both the technology director and the facilities director, their needs were higher than that, but they also could prioritize on to, you know, without sacrificing anything, how could we prioritize things so we could level fund those two areas as well.
What else?
Well, just, as you said, it's December.
Exactly.
And there's a lot of work left to go into it. So, thank
So
you.
in terms of what's ahead, there's going to, you know, we have another school committee meeting a week from tonight, and I'm not sure exactly what will change between now and next week, but we'll certainly have some more discussion. And then we'll discuss it again at our January meeting. I almost said June. Then by obligation through the regional agreement, we need to have a draft budget submitted to the towns and at the town libraries by January 13th. So we have a draft, again, always a draft with a capital D, and then February is when we have the public hearing, and then we vote on it in March, and then January 30th, and then the 31st, we'll be going to the two towns, Howard on Monday and Chatham on Tuesday at the end of January to be talking about that. So between now and the middle of January, and then definitely between now and the end of January is when we'll have to roll up our sleeves and to use a overused statement, perhaps, sharpen our pencils.
Just remind me where the draft budget that is presented to the selectmen of the two towns in January, is that a draft budget that's presented by the administration, or is that a draft budget that is tentatively approved by the school committee? I just don't remember exactly how that.
No, it's not an approved. It's really a conversation, and then we have our public hearing after that. And in the meantime, the superintendent and the treasurer and I we've been meeting with the finance teams of the two towns to really see how this is all aligning with their needs. They both belong to the Cape Cod Municipal Health Group as well.
Anything else? Thank you very much. I'm going to say we're looking forward to the next report, but I'm not so sure. Subcommittee reports. Are there any subcommittees that would like to provide us with a report? Nothing going on with policy or anything? Ms. Scott.
The policy subcommittee met for a second time to work on the wellness policy, just to give an update, and we are not near finished. But we did meet.
We'll be back here again next Thursday.
We will not be meeting between now and next Thursday.
Any other subcommittee reports? Well, I think you kind of got a summary of the finance committee report from Ms. Zernial. Anybody else? Superintendent's report, Mr. Carpenter.
Well, we're kind of coming into that magical time of the year, or maybe we're in it from the fourth Thursday in November till the beginning of the new calendar year. But it was nice to see so many families come out for our first Thanksgiving football game in Monomoy, and we are officially undefeated on Thanksgiving. So if only the Dallas Cowboys and the Detroit Lions could say that. Tomorrow night is the Harwich Stroll, and there's a tree lighting event, and Tim Ressler, one of our elementary school music teachers, who works with both Chatham Elementary School and Harwich Elementary School with their advanced course, will be having our students perform at the tree lighting at 5:30 in Harwichport. So go out and support the students. Harwich Elementary School's PTO will also have their annual holiday bazaar this Saturday from 9 to 12. The Monomoy Regional Middle School drama group will be having a performance of Making It. It happens December 8th and 9th at 6:30 p.m. and December 10th at 1 p.m. And then we have our winter concerts that are coming up. So the high school winter concert is December 8th at 7 o'clock. The middle school winter course concert is December 13th at 6:30. And the middle school winter band concert is December 15th at 6:30. So I'd encourage you to come out and see some of those events. And now for what you've all been waiting for, my HVAC report.
We should just put that on the agenda.
So the, just prior to this meeting, the building committee met, and we, I think as a sign of frustration with the way that the HVAC issues have been going, there was a motion made at the building committee meeting for me to work with our council to exercise whatever option there is within the arbitration therein, and if necessary, invoke the performance bond to try to break the break the logjam when it comes to resolving issues with the HVAC system. So, my hope is that this is when one goes after a performance bond, it's sort of the sort of most leverage that you have with a contractor, and it's really getting to that point that there's not movement on fixing these units. And I think everyone's getting quite concerned as we go into the winter season that we've got 14-some heating units on the roof that are currently not doing what they're supposed to do, and we need to make sure that they are working reliably. So that's that will be something I'll be working with council on between now and our next meeting. Also, just two last things in your packet. Tomorrow is the last day for written feedback to go to the Commissioner of Education and the board on expansion of Sturgis Charter School. So I think this is kind of quietly sort of happening out there. I think, and people might not understand, even my own kids, they're like, well, Sturgis isn't expanding, didn't question 2 get voted down? Well, the reality is, question 2 was voted down by the voters in Massachusetts, but just because question 2 was voted down, question 2 was setting a threshold that that you could see expansion or additional charter schools up to 12 every year. It doesn't mean that you can't still see some expansion of charter schools, but there was a minimum that was actually put out there with question 2. Sturgis has asked to expand their charter from 800 to 850. I sent a letter off to the commissioner and board, just sort of articulating what I think are the salient points. If we even go back to all those commercials about question 2, talking about how charter schools will bring better schools to areas where the schools are struggling. Well, the reality is every public high school on Cape Cod is a level 1 or level 2 school. They're succeeding by the state's ratings. As we all well know, school choice is quite well and thriving on Cape Cod, and every one of those high schools opens their doors to students from other communities, so that families really have the option at the high school level to choose their local school district. They could choose 2 different good technical high schools. There's the charter school, or there's 7 other public high schools and local school districts. We find that there are 9.2% of the high school age students on the Cape already go to a charter school, which is almost 3 times more frequent than the number of students that attend charter schools in the state. And then one of my concerns is that, that expansion is going to bleed what I refer to as a vital resource, which is the students themselves from the local school districts. And then I sort of, at least in what I write, suggest that given that we are seeing a declining enrollment on Cape Cod, because there's fewer and fewer students just naturally here from the census data, that it would make far more sense to go and tie expansion or contraction to enrollment, to census data, not to just sort of arbitrarily just expand. And then I raised something that I also raised in the piece that I'd written previously for, or against question 2, which is a concern that I have that we're creating sort of a dual school system with regard to our charter schools, that the demographics that exist at Sturgis are very different than the demographics that exist in the student population on Cape Cod, and particularly the students that are in Barnstable, where the charter school's located, and just sort of suggest that, that prior to expanding a charter, maybe it should be requested to have the charter school find a way to mitigate their enrollment demographic discrepancies within the current cap that they have, and to find ways to educate all children like the local school districts do. So anyway, so that letter's off to the board, and we'll see what happens in the decision.
Questions about that. Do you know whether your fellow Cayman Islands superintendents are submitting similar?
I don't know. I sent an email out to our group earlier this week, just recommending that they do so, and I meet with them tomorrow. So we'll share who's written what, and who's commented.
And do you know what Sturgis's rationalization for it is? Are they claiming that I can imagine they're either claiming that they need the money, or they're saying that because there's such a waiting list, they feel they have an obligation to make the waiting list smaller. Do you know what their rationalization, justification is?
I don't.
So.
I really appreciate that you followed up with that letter. Do you think that we should follow up with a very similar letter to yours?
Well, I think if you do, it would need to get penned and sent tomorrow.
You staying up tonight, Sharon?
No, but I just thought maybe Barbara could modify Scott's slightly. No, tomorrow to send it,
perhaps
but
we could add our names to his letter.
yes, I think that would be fine.
I don't know if any of us have read his letter yet, but, what do you think? You want to take a look at it? Well, it has to be in by tomorrow, by electronic transmission.
Well, I have submitted this already.
Okay.
However, I think, there could be something short and sweet that also gets sent that says the Monomoy Regional School Committee supports this, or I guess maybe supports the wrong direction, since it's arguing against.
Supports the double negative. Well, I would say that would require a vote of the committee. Any support for that? Hearing none. Continue.
Also in your packet is what we would call my summary of conversations that happened during the comprehensive district review that we had, and it was a very interesting process in that we didn't know how big the team was going to be, what it was going to look like, other than they had a very well-defined schedule that they wanted to follow, and they had lots of documents that they wanted to see us provide in advance. And yeah, so we did that. The team that came down here was a team that was hired. I guess the Department of Ed went and contracted with a company called Schoolworks out of, I think it's on the North Shore. I think it's maybe Peabody. And they had a team of 7 people come. The head of that team was the former Wachusett Superintendent Tom Pandesio, and they were quite thorough in the conversations. They took in 4 days. I think that team of 7 spent a lot of time getting to know our district. They met with administrators and teachers and parents and even students here at the high school. They got in and observed 63 different classrooms at all the different grade levels, and made notes of what they saw, and then would come. Tom would stop by and sort of triangulate. Here's what we're seeing. Here's what we've learned. At the end of it, they don't go and provide the district a written report, and their written report needs to go to the Department of Ed, who contracted with them, and it's the Department of Ed that will, over the course of the next several weeks or few months, ultimately release a report, and you can go online to see the comprehensive district reviews of school districts in the area or in the state who have had reports generated in the past. But they do a nice job of trying to verbally share what their findings were, and to just make sure that what they're seeing is consistent with what we've come to understand, and if not, address that. But what they saw, I felt really summarized where we are. So so I sent this out to our staff just to share with them, because I know a number of them were sort of anxious about who are these people in my classroom, what do they think of our district. I think one of the key questions I had for Tom when he first came, and I know a number of our staff asked that of Tom when they met with him, is why Monomoy? Like, why is a district review team here? And Tom shared that more than likely, the DESE was looking at where we were, with our MCAS scores and things, and just seeing that our MCAS scores aren't bad, but they're also not good, and they're also not, they haven't been improving. There's not this consistent tracking upward, and that's generally a reason that the state would go and flag, say, hey, let's go down and take a look and see if we can give the district some feedback on how to improve. I think it was really clear to them when they came here that many of the things that they might say, here's what you should put in place, we've actually been putting in place, and they're there. And I think the thematic sort of summary of their findings are that we're very much a work in progress. They were able to go and say, hey, this district has a really well-established curriculum. This past year, Carla came here about a year ago and talked about implementing a type of assessment, measures of academic progress, where every student from kindergarten all the way up towards the high school is getting assessed, and that we're using this data in real time to go and put in interventions to support kids that struggle, and to have them get what they need to be more successful. Because just taking MCAS data at the end of the year, it's by the time you get the data, they've now moved on to the next grade level. This way we have data at the beginning of the year. We test the kids again midway through and see how they're tracking, and if we need to change the supports that we're giving, we do, and can track them at the end. So so they're like, well, you've got that in place. It's like, but, you know, but they're showing up after we administered the first round of tests. You know, there's not a chance for us to go and even show how our own kids are tracking on that because we've just had that first one.
Is that why it's identified in the report that there was a lack of consistency in the curricula?
I'll get to
I
that
didn't know
one.
if this is what you were talking.
That one I think is different.
Okay.
So they also looked at that we have been putting in place many interventions for learners that struggle. Different types of response to intervention at the elementary level. Last year, part of the budget process was to have the academic center coordinator here at the high school to provide those supports. Mark Wilson has put in place a seminar block that for students who succeeded and met their grade levels expectations on these MAP tests are doing an enrichment type of activity, and students who struggled, they were able to go and identify what they struggled in, and they're getting a support, a remediation support specifically to help them. So they saw all these things that we have in place, and they saw the professional development that happens. We're the only school district on the Cape that has this every other week, professional development that's going on with our teachers, and they saw that you've got that professional development, you've got the curriculum, you've got the supports in place. Now you just need to go and really shift the district to become data-driven, to look at the data, make sure that the kids are tracking in the right direction, give them the supports. The one thing I do bring up here that in terms of their triangulated finding that Donna mentioned is that they did say that after going into 60 plus different classrooms, there is some situations where they're seeing a lack of consistency between the curriculum that we've defined and the curriculum that's happening within the classroom. So you can imagine that the team is moving between, 2 fifth grade classrooms or, 4th grade classrooms and looking at what are the, what's the curriculum that is happening in the room relative to what we say the curriculum is going to be for that class. And likewise, we're, wanting to just comment that there needs to be more consistency amongst the administrators in following up through the evaluation process to ensure that that curriculum that's happening in front of, in each classroom is dovetailed with the, the curriculum that has been, created for the school district. So, so all in all, it was a good process. It was a learning process for, for us and for the district. And I think that at least my synopsis hopefully reflects what we're going to see in the report that'll come down the road. But this is me trying to go and type up, okay, it's like, this is what I'm hearing, and send it first off to the principals. It's like, because we were all there in the room. It's like, okay, did you hear the same thing? The same thing. But I was pretty impressed with with how well they got to know us in a short period of time.
That seems to be the last agenda. Is there anything else that anybody would like to address? Sharon?
I mentioned to Scott that I had 2 calls just about the, on our website, when they list their school committee, sometimes they're using an abbreviation of the Monomoy Regional School Committee or something, MRSD, yeah. And so people aren't finding this. I don't know if anyone else has heard that at all, but if we could just have that written out, then that would be great. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I understand that.
Where is it? Is it on the calendar on the front page, or where is it?
Yes, yes, when they have the calendar up there. I didn't even know 2 people watched this, but but they couldn't find it.
Ms. Richardson?
I don't know, a month ago, since we are meeting next week
Yeah.
instead of in 2 weeks, I was just wondering if on that next agenda, there'll be a report about the,
We're talking about that
okay,
at our next
I
agenda.
just
We-
didn't want time to go by.
We have it planned.
It will happen. Maybe slightly different than
That's
we
fine, as long as
We'll
there's
get it.
something.
I think the January things that you had will be presented. But yes,
Anything else? Would anyone like to make a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Yes, but it doesn't say school committee, it says
We're
SC.
talking about the TV channel.
SC on the
Not
TV
the-
channel,
not
not
the
on this,
website.
on the web, on the TV channel.
Or on-
Simple.
Or on the YouTube page,
Yeah.
maybe.
I don't know about the YouTube page, but that would be good, because we just want to hear.
Oh, dear. Oh.